Welcome to Stranger Bricks, the channel where we build and learn together. What if the Triceratops you think you know never really existed? What if everything from the way it fought, to the way it lived, to the way it looked has been misunderstood for more than a century? Today, we're uncovering the real, scientifically verified secrets of one of the most iconic dinosaurs of all time. And the truth is far more bizarre, fascinating, and unbelievable than anything you learned as a kid. Let's begin with the creature itself. Triceratops. The name alone conjures an image almost everyone recognizes, a massive plant eater with 3 horns and a giant frill. But what if I told you that even the simple idea of 3 horns is misleading? Because yes, it had 3 major ones, but the frill behind its head was covered in small bony knobs known as epoccipitals. These weren't small, insignificant bumps. They were anatomical features that gave Triceratops far more points, ridges, and shapes than its name suggests. Instead of 3 horns, it might be more accurate to call it a crown of horns. Now let's go deeper. Most people picture Triceratops as a bulky tank, slow, stubborn, a dinosaur that simply existed so T-Rex had something dramatic to fight. But the reality? Triceratops was surprisingly agile, powerful, and incredibly complex. Its skull alone could be over 7 feet long, larger than most humans are tall, and the weight more than a small car. Imagine carrying a car attached to your neck every second of your life. That's how strong Triceratops had to be. And that brings us to curiosity number 1. The frill wasn't designed for protection. This is one of the biggest myths in dinosaur history. For decades, people assumed Triceratops used the frill as a shield against predators like Tyrannosaurus rex. But when scientists began slicing fossil frills and studying their microstructure, they found something shocking. The frill was thin, very thin in many areas. It wasn't strong enough to block a serious bite. It would have shattered under the force of a T-Rex attack. So if it wasn't for armor, then what was it for? Display, communication, social signaling. In other words, the frill was a billboard, a status symbol, a biological announcement system. Triceratops may have used it to attract mates, intimidate rivals, show dominance, or even regulate heat. Modern animals do exactly this, from the bright frills of lizards to the horns of antelope. Triceratops wasn't primitive, it was sophisticated. But if the frill wasn't for fighting, what about the horns? Surely those were weapons, right? Well, yes and no. The horns were capable of causing massive damage. They were strong, thick, and anchored deeply into the skull, but fossil evidence shows they weren't primarily used for stabbing predators. Instead, many Triceratops skulls showed damage patterns consistent with horn-on-horn combat. 2 Triceratops locking horns like giant prehistoric bulls, shoving, twisting, and wrestling for dominance. This tells us something incredible about their behavior. Triceratops weren't solitary. They interacted, competed, displayed. Their lives may have been far more social than we ever imagined. And speaking of social behavior, here's something that will surprise you. Juvenile Triceratops looked completely different from adults. Their horns were curved backward, almost pointing toward their tails. Their frills were small, rounded, and not yet ornamented. They looked like totally different animals. In fact, for over 100 years, paleontologists kept discovering new species that turned out to be nothing more than young Triceratops. Scientists eventually realized they had mistakenly created an entire family tree from one species growing up. Let's go inside the mouth now. One of the most astonishing facts about Triceratops is how many teeth it had. Hundreds. But they weren't arranged like your teeth or mine. They were stacked in vertical columns called dental batteries. Each battery could hold dozens of teeth, with new ones constantly replacing old ones. Triceratops wasn't just chewing plants, it was shredding them, grinding them, pulverizing them. Its bite force may have been one of the strongest of any herbivorous dinosaur, capable of slicing straight through palm fronds and crushing tough plant material. But the secret weapon wasn't the teeth, It was the beak. Triceratops had a sharp, hooked beak similar to that of a parrot. Imagine a parrot's beak scaled up to dinosaur size, strong enough to fracture branches, strip bark, and bite clean through hard vegetation. Herbivore? Yes. Helpless? Absolutely not. Next, let's explore the senses. Triceratops had enormous nasal passages, much bigger than would be needed just for breathing. This suggests a very strong sense of smell, good enough to detect predators like T-Rex from far away, good enough to find food during seasonal changes, good enough to identify individuals within its herd. The eyes tell another story. They were positioned on the sides of the head, giving Triceratops a wide field of vision, but the forward tilt of the skull suggests it may have had some degree of binocular overlap, meaning it could see depth better than most herbivores. Good vision, excellent smell, advanced communication. This animal wasn't stupid. It was adapted. It was aware. It was alive in every sense of the word. Now let's talk about one of the most shocking discoveries. Some Triceratops survived T-Rex attacks. Paleontologists have found skulls with deep punctures, punctures that match T-Rex teeth perfectly. But here's the twist. The bone around the wounds had healed, meaning the attack happened, the Triceratops lived through it, and it kept living for months, maybe years afterward. In the movies, T-Rex always wins, but in real life, Triceratops sometimes walked away. Now here's something even more mind-bending. When you picture dinosaurs, you probably imagine a world far removed from us, millions and millions of years ago. But Triceratops and T-Rex were alive during the final stretch of the Cretaceous, right before the meteor hit. They were among the last dinosaurs on Earth. Imagine their world on that final day. Giant herds of Triceratops grazing under forests of palms and ferns, while T-Rex hunted in the shadows, a world moments away from extinction. Let's explore the skin. Fossilized impressions of Triceratops skin show large polygonal scales that varied across the body. Some were small and tightly packed, others were large, raised, and formed patterns that might have served for display. Some clusters looked almost like armor plating, though they weren't thick enough to stop an attack. Instead, they may have helped regulate heat or signal health to others. And that brings us to one of the greatest mysteries: color. We don't know Triceratops' exact colors, but we have strong clues. Animals that use body parts for display almost always have color. Bright, bold, noticeable color. Shades that stand out. Patterns that send messages. The frill may have been colored like a bird's display feathers. Reds, blues, yellows, anything that could have helped communicate strength, age, readiness to mate, or even emotion. We often picture dinosaurs in dull browns and greens, but nature rarely paints its most expressive animals in camouflage. Let's talk about movement. People often imagine Triceratops as slow, but its body tells a different story. Its legs were strong, muscular, and built to carry tons of weight, but they weren't sprawled out like a lizard's. They were positioned under the body, supporting quick forward motion. Its neck was powerful enough to swing that massive head in a split second. Triceratops wasn't a tank, it was a charging bulldozer. If it ran at you, you wouldn't have time to react. Another fascinating detail: its tail was relatively short for a ceratopsian. This helped keep weight forward, balancing the enormous skull. Everything about Triceratops' anatomy was engineered around that head: the horns, the frill, the muscles, the teeth. Let's dive deeper into behavior. Fossils show that some Triceratops lived into old age. Their bones show wear patterns that only appear after decades of life. This is unusual for dinosaurs, and it tells us something important. Triceratops was successful. It was thriving up until the very end of the dinosaur era. Now let's address something scientists still debate today. Did Triceratops live in herds? For years, the answer was no. Most fossils were found alone, but more recent discoveries show groups of juveniles fossilized together. This suggests a fascinating possibility. Young Triceratops may have lived in social groups for protection, while adults lived more solitary lives or formed smaller groups. This mixed social structure would have been similar to many modern large mammals. Let's consider how Triceratops might have sounded. It had huge nasal cavities and a long nasal canal. This suggests it could produce deep, resonant sounds, maybe like a low bellow or a rumbling trumpet. These sounds could travel long distances across open plains and forests. Vocal communication would have been vital for warning others of predators, calling for mates, or coordinating group movements. Now let's address something scientists still debate today. Did Triceratops live in herds? For years, the answer was no. Most fossils were found alone, but more recent discoveries show groups of juveniles fossilized together. This suggests a fascinating possibility. Young Triceratops may have lived in social groups for protection, while adults lived more solitary lives or formed smaller groups. This mixed social structure would have been similar to many modern large mammals. Let's consider how Triceratops might have sounded. It had huge nasal cavities and a long nasal canal. This suggests it could produce deep, resonant sounds, maybe like a low bellow or a rumbling trumpet. These sounds could travel long distances across open plains and forests. Vocal communication would have been vital for warning others of predators, calling for mates, or coordinating group movements. Now let's return to something we touched on earlier, the horns. Fossil evidence shows that Triceratops' horns grew throughout life. In young individuals, the horns curved backward. As they matured, the horns grew forward and upward. This means Triceratops' head shape constantly changed, reflecting age, maturity, and perhaps even social rank. No two skulls look exactly the same. Each one is unique, shaped by life, injury, and growth. Let's talk about predators again. Triceratops wasn't just prey, it was competition. T-Rex fossils show injuries that match Triceratops' horn wounds. In other words, Triceratops didn't just defend itself, it fought back hard. There were likely battles between these two giants that ended with serious injuries on both sides. Now consider how Triceratops ate. It didn't just graze, it browsed, it clipped, it crushed. It processed plants with extraordinary efficiency. Its jaws didn't move up and down, they moved in a complex grinding motion, like scissors sliding past each other. This allowed Triceratops to eat plants few other herbivores could digest, giving it access to food sources that were literally out of reach for other species. Let's examine something even more surprising. Triceratops was incredibly adaptable to different environments. Fossils show it lived in forests, floodplains, and even areas prone to drought. It wasn't restricted to one habitat, it thrived in many. Another interesting fact, some Triceratops skulls show evidence of bone infections, healed fractures, and even deformities. This tells us individuals lived long enough to recover from injuries, another sign of resilience and strength. Now, here's a lesser-known detail that surprises even dinosaur fans. Triceratops may have engaged in seasonal behavior. During certain times of the year, it might have migrated short distances to find better vegetation or breeding grounds. The horns and frill may have played roles in these seasonal gatherings, visual signals that helped organize group behavior. As we approach the final part of this journey, let's consider the most dramatic moment in Triceratops' existence, the asteroid impact. Triceratops was alive when it happened. The world around them erupted in firestorms, earthquakes, tsunamis, and darkness that lasted months. This iconic dinosaur survived predators, climate changes, and geological events, but not the asteroid. It was among the last non-avian dinosaurs to ever walk the Earth. And here's the final twist. Triceratops fossils are so common, so well preserved, and so complex that new discoveries are still rewriting its story today. We are continuously learning new things about its behavior, its biology, and its world. Every fossil reveals another secret. So the next time you picture Triceratops, don't imagine a giant with dull intelligence, communication, power, and emotion. An animal with a life as complex and rich as any modern species. A creature perfectly adapted to its world, one of the last champions of the age of dinosaurs. And perhaps the most amazing truth of all is this: the more we learn about Triceratops, the more mysterious it becomes. The real creature behind the three horns is far stranger, more dynamic, and more astonishing than the legend we grew up with.